Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You ever notice how thrown off you can be when your routine gets messed up? Like even something small makes you feel like the whole day is out of whack.
Yeah, totally. It's like our brains are wired for that predictability.
Exactly. And it turns out there's some serious science behind why routines are so powerful, especially when it comes to hitting those peak performance moments. So today, we're going deep on the science of routines.
We're talking about how those everyday habits, those little things we do almost without thinking, actually prime our brains for better focus, better consistency, better performance in literally any area of your life.
I love that. And you know what? The coolest example we found was actually from the world of golf, of all things.
Right. You wouldn't think it, but pro golfers, they're like the masters of routine. And what we found is that their strategies, they apply to pretty much anything where you need focus and consistency.
So think about it. Before a golfer even steps up to the tee, they've got their whole routine dialed in. They're checking the wind, visualizing the shot, maybe even taking a few practice swings with a specific club. That, my friends, is what you call a pre-performance routine.
And then you've got the swing itself, right? The in-performance routine where all that prep work comes together.
Okay, but what about after the shot? There's got to be more to it than just, did I hit that well or not?
You're absolutely right. That post-performance routine, that's where things get really interesting. It's about analyzing, sure, but it's also about how you carry the mental state, the focus, into the next shot. Did that last shot help you or hurt you? It's about staying in the zone, controlling that mental game.
And that's where this whole thing really clicks for me, because it's not just about golf, right? Imagine giving a presentation. Your pre-performance routine could be rehearsing, calming those pre-presentation jitters, getting your notes in order.
And then boom, you're in it, delivering those key points, working the room. That's your in-performance routine.
Exactly. And just like the golfer analyzing their shot, afterward you might review audience feedback, figuring out what worked, what could be even better next time. It's all connected.
It really is. And the thing is, there's actual science behind why this works. Our source material talks about something called readiness potential. Basically, our brains, they need a little warm-up to prepare for an action, and that warm-up involves creating what we call a motor program for that specific task. Routines, they help build those programs.
So it's not just psychological, there's a neurological basis for it. Fascinating.
Totally. It's like imagine trying to hack through a jungle versus walking down a familiar path. One's clearly more efficient, right? Less effort, less energy wasted.
Routines are like building those familiar paths in our brains so we're not wasting mental energy figuring things out on the fly. Makes sense.
Oh, it does. And that frees up all those mental resources for, you guessed it, better performance. Pretty cool when you think about it.
It is.
Yeah.
But okay, so what happens when a routine gets disrupted? You know, like those mornings when you can't find your keys and suddenly your whole day feels out of whack or traffic makes you late. What's going on in our brains then?
Well, that's when we see the downside of relying on those mental shortcuts. Our source material was very clear about this breaker routine, and it can really throw you off. You're basically back in that jungle, having to forge a new path.
Ugh, it's the worst feeling. It makes you realize just how much we depend on those automatic processes without even realizing it. Our brains, they like predictability.
They do, which is why building consistent routines, it's so crucial. It's not just about being efficient, it's about reducing stress, creating stability. The more we can offload to those automatic processes, the more brain power we have for, well, everything else.
Okay, so we've covered the why behind routines, but how do we actually put this into practice? I think a lot of people listening are thinking, okay, this is all great, but where do I even start?
Right, because it can feel overwhelming. But honestly, one of the biggest takeaways from the research is that routines, they're basically just habits stringed together.
Oh, I like that. Habits strung together.
Yeah, think about something as simple as getting dressed in the morning. We don't even think about it, we just do it in a certain order. Same principle applies to building a routine for anything.
So instead of overhauling your entire life, maybe the key is starting small, like nailing that morning routine or that pre-presentation routine we were talking about. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Small changes, those are key. Build those habits up over time. Think of it like, Rome wasn't built in a day. A solid routine, it takes time too.
And the research backs that up, right?
Yeah.
Like consistent routines actually do lead to better performance.
They do. And we're not just talking about, anecdotal evidence here. Think about elite athletes. Those peak performers across all kinds of sports, they rely on pre-performance routines to hit their stride when it matters most.
It's like their brain gets a signal, okay, it's go time.
Exactly. And it's not just physical either. Think about like a basketball player. taking those deep breaths before a free throw. Yes, there's the physical act of shooting the ball, but those breaths, that's about controlling their heart rate, quieting the mind, getting in the zone.
So those routines, they're like a mental trigger then, signaling to the brain, time to perform.
That's a great way to put it. And it's funny, you see this across so many different sports. Like, did you know Michael Phelps, the swimmer, he had this whole meticulous pre-race routine, stretching in a very specific order, listening to music. He even used to slap himself on the back.
No way. See, that's what I love, those little quirks.
Yep.
It's easy to dismiss them as superstition, but there's obviously something deeper going on there.
Oh, absolutely. It's like their brain is wired to perform its best when they follow that specific sequence of actions. And it's not just Phelps. Serena Williams, the tennis star, she bounces the ball a certain number of times before each serve. And Jason Kidd, the basketball player, he was famous for blowing a kiss to his mother before every game.
Love it. It's like a mental checklist. It's almost like they're making sure all the pieces are in place before they go out there and perform.
And that's what's so cool about this whole concept of routines. It's not about copying someone else. It's about understanding the science and finding what works for you. Experiment.
It's about taking those little moments, those actions, and turning them into building blocks for success. But we've got to bring it back to our listeners, right? Because we can talk about this all day, but at the end of the day, it's about how we apply this to our own lives.
Exactly. It's all about application.
So think about something you're working towards right now, a goal. Maybe it's that presentation we were talking about, learning a new language, anything. What kind of routine, even a small one, can you build around that goal?
I love that challenge. What little things can you do consistently that tell your brain, okay, it's time to focus, it's time to shine?
Write those steps down. Start small. Be consistent. I think you'll be amazed at the difference it makes.
Me too. It's those small, consistent actions that add up over time.
It's not about becoming a robot. Right. It's not about sticking to some rigid schedule no matter what. Life happens.
Exactly. Routines need to be flexible, adaptable. It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot that works for you.
Find those little rituals that help you get in the zone, that tell your brain, all right, time to shine. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the science of routines, I want to leave you with a little challenge.
I'm intrigued. What's the challenge?
Think about something you're working towards right now. A goal, big or small, that you're really fired up about.
Okay, I like it.
Maybe it's acing that presentation we talked about or finally launching that side hustle you've been dreaming of.
Yeah.
Whatever gets you excited, gets you moving.
Love it.
Now here's the challenge.
Yeah, okay.
What kind of routine, even if it's just one or two small things, can you build around that goal?
Interesting.
What can you do consistently, day after day, to signal to your brain, it's go time?
I like that, those little signals.
Right. And write those steps down, make them concrete. Start small. Be consistent. And I think you'll be amazed by the results.
Absolutely.
You might just unlock a whole new level of performance.
It's about those small steps, those daily actions that add up over time, right?
Exactly. And hey, while you're out there building those routines and crushing those goals, we want to hear about it. Share your experiences with us on social media.
Yeah, let's make this a conversation.
We might even feature your story on a future episode. Until then, keep those routines rolling, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.